So we have, and Microsoft have an application modernization process, as you would imagine. So it's in 3 stages. We start with the assess stage, and that's about understanding what you've got. Yeah, we're coming from most people have an on-premise environment, or you have services hosted elsewhere. We want to understand what you've got. Let's have a look at what it is, how it's constructed, how we can utilize all this intelligence, all this data to formulate the next stage, which is the migrate. How are we going to get you? How are we going to redeploy potentially code, potentially containerizing things? How are we going to maybe lift and shift services to where they are to Azure? And how's that going to help you meet your objectives and the goals that you've set yourself out? More importantly, once you're there, how are we going to start taking advantage of some of the things we talked about, that Andy's talked about? I want to start introducing AI. I want to start making my application more intelligent, start leveraging some of the power of machine learning and robotic processes and automation everywhere to make sure that we're able to deliver a better user experience for customers and users as well. So there's an app assessment service. So you can all go to a URL. Don't know if it's published there, but we'll stick it in the chat. You can Google that anyway. It's on the Microsoft service. And it will provide you with a free custom assessment report. It will look at your public endpoint. So if you have a web presence, or you can download an appliance to run in the background if it's in a data center somewhere and you don't have a public presence, and it will scan out a high level and generate you. So sorry, Beth, I just read that, it distracted me. So it'll give you a high level report to identify blockers predominantly. It will say, look, there's going to be issues moving certain components of your application, certain libraries aren't supported, your authentication model isn't supported in its current format. So therefore we so you're not seeing that, Beth and Liam? Is the slides moving on? Because we should have.
I can see everything fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, excellent. So this will give you a really high level indication of what potentially could be stopping you moving services as they are into Azure, and what, more importantly, what effort you need to concentrate on modernizing. So like I said, if your authentication model isn't supported, well, how much effort is it for us to change that authentication model? How do I start introducing things like key vault? How do I start moving tokens and stop using passwords and things like that? How can I embed that? If that's a big piece of work, then that might slow your adoption down. But if it's a quick change, I didn't realize that was configured like that, silly me, then suddenly you can accelerate your adoption and you can accelerate your change. But if you're not aware of it, then you don't know it's going to come and bite you. So things like this will really help you from a high level get a better, deeper understanding of things that are going to block you. The next step, a deeper stage of that, is utilizing an assessment from a third party called Cloud Pilot. It's a Microsoft-backed assessment. So Microsoft have identified third party that have this software called Cloud Pilot, and we'll talk probably a bit more later about how we can sponsor you for getting assessments and how we can help you with understanding some of the output from these assessments. But what this ultimately will give you is it will go through all your code, it will go through all your applications, and it will give you that properly deep and detailed analysis of what you've got and what needs changing and how ready your application or your code is to migrate to a cloud environment and what options you have available. If we're talking, I want to move everything serverless, okay, well, let's use that as a target state and let's grade your environment against serverless. Okay, well, I can't go serverless because of this, this, and this. Here's the changes that you need to do. It's going to cost you, 15 hours worth of development. Okay, well, that's acceptable. For me as an organization, I'm quite accepting of doing that because the benefits of moving serverless for me as an organization outweigh the development time. Or it might be actually, it's not economically viable for you to do this in that manner. We might have to move to maybe a web app or maybe go further left and go into a VM at this point. Maybe there's other things we can do with scale sets and automation and maybe even containerizing things. But that's allowing you to identify where there's not faults in your code, but issues in your code that are stopping you to realise that complete cloud enablement going forward. So we can help you get this scan from Microsoft for free, but also more importantly, we can help you understand the scans will come up and show you all this data, but you need to have a better understanding of what this is and what that actually means to your organization and what it means to a modernization of your application going forward. So any questions on any of the assessments? Excellent. I like no questions. So then we move into the migrate phase, and Microsoft, as you'd imagine, have a raft of tools available to help us with this. So you can see the three different kind of pillars that Microsoft would envisage you using as part of that migrate phase. There's tools there, so there's migration assistant tools to help you move some of the web components, .NET, PHP applications. We can use the application migration tool to shift some of the web content from A to B. We're not doing much to it. It's web content at the end of the day. All the values written in PHP or .NET. So us moving that from A to B should be quite straightforward. Looking at bringing code, so being able to redeploy code that you've already got into maybe an existing pipeline. So if you're already deploying infrastructure as code, or you're deploying your application as code, then we can replicate that, or we can help you build new, redeploying your code using a new pipeline delivery. You might be using Jenkins or something in the back end, or suddenly I want to start using DevOps or Azure DevOps. I want to start using some of the tooling there for pipeline management, or let's speak to Mukesh and start looking at how Chocolatey can help deliver software lifecycle management and other components there as well. Or you may have gone through an element of containerization beforehand. You've deployed your applications into Docker. Maybe that's being hosted somewhere else. You can bring that container over to a Kubernetes service, or maybe a Docker service hosted on Azure. It's quite granular what that migration phase can look like for you. But ultimately, it's making sure we get everything ready for that migration, so that we can pick one of the three paths to allow us to take a benefit from something like the Azure Web App Service at the bottom, or maybe going codeless, serverless into an Azure function, but identifying how we can get to that target state, which has been highlighted at the bottom. Let's skip on there. So this is the app service migration assistance that we talked about. So how we can get the .NET or PHP application over utilizing this tool. Obviously, there's other languages that we can utilize, but the support function at this point is limited to .NET and PHP for this scenario that we're using. It will automatically check paths to certain applications after we've done that assessment, and you've downloaded the tool. We've performed some readiness checks. It's literally a flick of a switch. It's an automatic step-by-step wizard for a migration of web services from where they are to Azure. Microsoft do really make a migration of a web service to Azure very easily. And ultimately, which will lend itself to making an app modernization or migration a lot more easier as well. So quickly go through some of the other code functions, realize the time. So kind of looking at bringing code. So customers that want to redeploy existing code bases, you're not going to reinvent the wheel just for Microsoft. So utilizing the app service that has flexibility for choice of technologies that you want to use, development and for the deployment as well. It can support common programming languages and frameworks, all the flavors of .NET as you'd imagine, but also PHP, Node.js, Python, Java, Ruby, you name it. 1,000 different languages and frameworks out there, but also with development tools that you've probably got in place at the moment. So Visual Studio, VS Code, IntelliJ, or we talked about Oracle earlier, so maybe Eclipse or something like that as well that you're utilizing. source code repositories. This isn't something Microsoft's invented. Having a repository for source code has been around for decades. And this isn't something new. So it's a practice that developers have since they get into the field. So making sure that we're able to support not just GitHub. Obviously Microsoft have a vested interest in GitHub now, but potentially there's other Git repositories or things like Bitbucket as well. Or maybe you're looking at migrating that into a DevOps function as well. So utilizing repositories within Azure DevOps. Looking at CI/CD tools and engines. Azure DevOps obviously has the pipeline engine there, but we've talked about Jenkins or potentially Maven. There's other automation and CI/CD pipeline tooling that you've probably got deployed already. We need to make sure that we're aware of that, and we can work within the ecosystem of other tooling as well. For more effective deployment experiences, some of the app services provide several deployment slots on the same site, enabling you to have different environments for production, staging, testing, development, and that allows you to have a specific deployment pipeline for each of them. So that's kind of allows you to start doing things in a different fashion. I don't have to have entire segregation between my environments. So to be able to promote code from one area to another area becomes very simple at this point. Obviously there needs to be governance and testing frameworks and things like that around it, but hopefully that's all built into the CI/CD tooling. But having the app service with different deployment slots really does speed up that deployment time, and the way that you're able to deliver function and code to different environments quickly really does help you overcome some of that. To identify and resolve issues faster and more effectively, we want to be able to monitor, we want to be able to log things, we'll talk a bit more about this in a minute, this afternoon, well, not this afternoon, the other session later on, about what that support framework looks like. How do I understand what's going on within my application? Utilizing application insights is a very powerful tool to give developers insight, as the name suggests, into the workings of their services, and providing detailed information about usage, performance metrics, things like that. And also utilizing AI and automated debugging and reporting to identify root cause of issues and identify potential solutions. Utilizing AI, it's constantly trained, constantly getting better. Being able to identify how things could be fixed, or identifying inefficient code and things like that. This is all really achievable utilizing some of the ecosystem of tools from Microsoft. Ooh, skip on there. So looking at container migration, for containerized web applications or applications in a whole, app services support both Windows and Linux. As you imagine, Microsoft have become very aware, and they've managed to change tack and moved away from their walled garden approach of everything shall be Windows, everything shall be .NET. They're fully aware that people use tools outside of their ecosystem, and sometimes other tools are better to do the job, and therefore we need to make sure that we've got supportability for that and integration with that as well. We utilize things like the container registry for deployment of these services, so it allows us to replicate things like Docker Hub into the Azure Container Registry. You don't have to reinvent your orchestration engines to meet with Azure's guidelines and what Azure want you to do. You can bring things over quite easily. Customers can still enjoy the rest of the benefits from a fully managed platform when deploying containers. Things built in DevOps, integration with dev tools, intelligent monitoring by default. Ultimately, Azure loves to gather metrics, so let's use these metrics. Let's make sure we're making use of these metrics, and having multiple deployment slots like we talked about really does help. Help you release environments and test environments quickly, close to each other. To the data, so we've talked about moving applications, talked about using web content, moving web content from where it is to where it needs to be. But data is almost, well, almost as important. How we are collecting data, how we currently collect data, and how we're going to collect data in the future is very important. And being able to move consistent data sets over is very important. So Microsoft want to be able to make it easy for you to migrate databases, data sets into Azure very easily. They want it, that user experience, that administrative experience to get services over to Azure as seamless as possible. They don't want things not to work. They want you to jump on and start paying, for the services. So they have things like the Azure Database Migration Service, which will move your databases from the source to the destination. Whether that's SQL, Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Postgres, whatever that is. The supportability there for the respective managed services in Azure. We've got, if you want to talk more about the data element, we have some extra content available on that, but we've got limited time today. So then we move on to once everything's in Azure, we've deployed the code, we've migrated app services. Let's start looking at some of the exciting bits, the innovation phase. Making sure that some of the goals that we've called out at the beginning are realised. So making sure that you as a customer can realise the benefits of moving to the cloud quicker by enhancing the applications that you've moved with different tools and services within the Azure ecosystem. So maybe it's looking at effective deployments and monitoring. Maybe you haven't got any of these components in your application at this point, and you want to start innovating and delivering that. So making sure customers, you can benefit from the intelligence and proactive analytics from Azure Monitor. It's a really simple thing to set up. Why can't we take advantage of that? It's going to help set up your development pipelines with GitHub and Azure your DevOps. If you haven't got pipeline management alongside, we can help set that up. It sits alongside there. It's a tool that we can call upon. So why don't we use that as we go forward? So some of the more advanced services, so where you've already done a lot of this in the first place, and you're looking at that next level of advanced experience, we could start incorporating, like we said, AI services, machine learning components, artificial intelligence capabilities. Leveraging that into your application is very easy. Utilizing pre-built services such as cognitive search and the cognitive services that you have there, bot services, incorporating natural and innovative ways to engage with your end users through chatbots and real-time translation. Maybe you've got different markets, utilizing custom recommendations, utilizing the AI to understand what your users are doing and using that at your advantage. There's a lot of pre-built services that don't need a lot of coding, don't need a lot of development on, that Microsoft are able to give you out of the box. Obviously, you're going to get more value from spending some time and optimizing some of this capability. But for a quick win, for a good understanding of how we can start infusing this intelligence, it makes a lot of sense to use some of the out-of-the-box things to help give us that advanced level and advanced functionality. And we've talked about serverless, and moving more and more to that end game, shifting right as far as we can, being able to let you as customers quickly incorporate new functionality. Utilizing serverless technologies is an example of that, expanding the capabilities of an existing application with load production event-driven characteristics, being able to use Azure Functions, Logic Apps within existing applications, can integrate hundreds and hundreds of services with low code, no code experience for faster and simple innovation. Ultimately, if you're able to leverage Logic Apps with some of the other data sets, suddenly you've got some really powerful extensive services and able to integrate them with potentially other services or expanding upon what you've got as well. So it's a very, very important phase where you're able to demonstrate greater value. So obviously the assessment gave you an understanding of what you've got, whereas the migration was the execution of moving you into an Azure ecosystem, an Azure platform. And the innovate phase is very much about delivering that value back to your business and your organization in line with the goals that you kind of set out at the beginning.